Bonjour.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of So French. In this show we give you all the twists and turns of French politics and an insight to all things French.
Every 2 weeks we select the best, most interesting and fascinating of French news stories, all brought to you from our studio in the heart of Paris. My name is Stefan de Vries.
And my name is Sara Bertilsson.
And this week, France's military involvement in Africa in question after 13 soldiers died in a helicopter accident during an anti-jihadist operation.
And turning Black Friday green. Well, as the infamous November sales taking its grip on France, the country's politicians are getting ready to put the brakes on the shopping frenzy.
And we also decide to quit having a drink, or not.
But first, Stefan, are you ready?
Ready for what, Sarah?
Well, ready for this big week coming up, the Thursday, the 5th of December.
Well, for me, that's St. Nicholas, so the Dutch holiday. So yeah, I am ready for that. But that's probably not what you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about these big strikes that has been planned for France on this beginning of December. By some expected to be the biggest in decades, actually.
Yeah, it seems pretty serious, right? If people talk about Black Thursday, because the list of people or the jobs, the sectors that are on strike is getting longer by the day. So
you have teachers,
hospital personnel, of course the metro in Paris, the trains. Lawyers are even on strike. Maybe also some judges. Who else, Sarah?
I think we also have people working in pharmacies, if I'm not
really.
Yeah,
okay.
So a big list of people, and almost all the major unions have called for this strike, and of course the reason for this upset, or what we should call it, is of course the planned pensions reform. It has been announced since some time now. It was even part of Macron's election campaign in 2017. And now we're still not seeing a full proposition, but we are getting some ideas on what it might look like. And to many, this is not a very tempting.
No, it isn't. Of course, it was part of his election campaign in 2017 when Macron was elected. Basically, what he wants to do is to unify the system now. There are currently over 40 different pension systems. All kinds of jobs have very specific pension regimes. Some of them allow workers to retire in their mid to late 50s or even early 50s, like, for instance, the Paris metro conductors. So there are all kinds of different rights. And Macron would like to see one universal system with the same rights for all the French, égalité.
Well, private and public sector,
exactly.
All under the same type of scheme.
The reforms unveiled in July would still allow people to retire at 62, much younger than in most of Europe now. And of course, there's a problem that the population also in France is aging. So it's basically a technical problem that we have to deal with, and that's also something Macron is saying, but also Edouard Philippe, the prime minister. He said that, well, we're getting older, we cannot change that, but still the French do not seem to accept the fact that they will have to work longer. Well, the fact
is also that these different systems have been developed and negotiated over decades and over decades especially, and when you negotiate this kind of deal, it's not, of course, your employer is not just going to give you a retirement at 55.
No.
You pay for this retirement, often by a quite low salary.
Yeah.
And other, you step back from other certain advantages, etc. So, the government will, of course, have to buy back this at some point. You can't just up the retirement age and not give something back. And I think what we're seeing now is these unions showing off their muscles, of course, ahead of the final negotiations that will take place in the coming months.
Yeah. Of course, you cannot change it overnight, but the problem is it's very, very expensive system, much more expensive than in many other countries in Europe. It's about 13 to 14% of the government budget that goes to pensions, and also the pensions that the French receive are pretty low, actually. It's about 70% of their former income. It's much lower in Sweden, but in the Netherlands, for instance, it's over 100%. So people who retire, they earn actually more than when they work. But it's a very complicated system. And
just to mention then that the French are actually very inspired by the Swedish system. So
yeah, but if you tell them the truth, they're probably less inspired. But it's a huge, it's completely a web that's completely entangled. It's very difficult to start reforms, also because a lot of people they consider it their right to retire early, and they're absolutely not ready to say, okay, well, people get older, we all have to contribute to this changing system.
Of course, it's also coming at a time where we see over a year of these yellow vest protests, where part of the demands from the people and from the protesters were, to do something for the pensioners, because, you have a lot of people in France living with very little money, and especially those who have been working part-time, for example, with low salaries, and, their final years or decades, they live with, very, very little money. And then, you get this pension reform coming up on top of that. I think it could be a pretty tough movement growing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it will start on Thursday, the 5th of December, indefinitely. Well, in the sense that they didn't say this strike will last 2 or 3 days, but it may last maybe well after the holidays. A lot of people maybe will not be able to leave Paris because there are no trains, maybe no aeroplanes. So it's going to be very difficult. Why did they choose actually the date of the 5th of December?
Yeah, it's not just
not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence, exactly. It was the 5th of December, but in 1995, that probably one of the most disruptive strikes in France's recent history took place. At that time as well, against the planned reform of the pension system. It lasted more than 3 weeks, and there were no transportation during this time. And, people, I was not here at the time, but people still get some slight fear and panic in their eye when they talk about that time. I think
well, it may be good news for cyclists, because I'm sure that as per next week, there will be a lot of bicycles in the streets. So it's actually good for the environment. But indeed,
if the weather allows it.
If the weather allows it, of course. But indeed, in 1995, it actually cost the head of Alain Juppé, who was the prime minister at the time. And I think he had to quit. I don't really remember it anymore, but
well, at least he had to pay a pretty high price when it comes to the support from the people, and the government had to back down. I mean, there was no reform.
And many analysts now say that reform in 1995, so almost 25 years ago, that was the one that should have been implemented now, because that's the reason why we have still problems today. So you see that, the refusal to reform comes with a heavy price tag, and we're still in the same mess as we were in 1995. So what's what will be the impact, you think, on daily life as per the 5th of December?
Definitely school. We're already receiving messages that there will be no teaching on the 5th, maybe not even the 6th, and possibly not even the week after that. No canteen services, no metro, no trains. The national rail service, so the SNCF here in France, has announced that they're not selling tickets even between the 5th and the 8th. And then, of course, I mean, we will see how companies will react to it. But those who can work from home, I'm pretty sure they will try to do so, at least the first couple of days. But many people can't work from home.
No.
So, I mean, just the whole organization of trying to get to work, if you live far out, you live in the suburbs, for example, working in Paris, it's going to be complicated. Other around as well. And I mean, even if you're working in Paris, it could be a difficult day.
Absolutely.
So
and it's not a legal reason to miss your work when there's a strike.
It's not. So, and some people, I actually heard that some people even preparing to sleep at work to be sure to be there on time. And others will probably try to borrow a sofa or something at a friend's house if it's nearby where they work. But I mean, for some people that's possible. many others, that is not an option. So we're just going to have to see, I guess, in our next episode how all this turned out.
Yeah.
Maybe there will still be a strike, coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very possible. What about Emmanuel Macron? Is he zen about this? What's going to happen? Or is he a little bit nervous?
We had the Prime Minister coming out earlier this week and saying, starting to loosen up a little bit on this reform and saying, well, we're not going to give up. We will definitely go through it, push through with this reform. But, there's always a possibility to negotiate. Maybe it's not going to be applied to, until later. We're talking about people born in 1963. Now they're talking about being applied to people maybe born in 1970. So, we're seeing that, of course. And this is what it's like every time, both sides are showing off their muscles ahead of the negotiations. And then, there's always a room for negotiation and compromise. Yeah.
But unfortunately, the real reform is still always being postponed. So it's something that will continue, whereas other European countries, many of them already have reformed their pension system, but it seems really complicated to do so in France. So this will be a Black Thursday as per December the 5th. And if we don't have an episode in 2 weeks from now, that means
it's because we couldn't get to the studio.
Or maybe we were on strike as well. No, that won't happen. Don't worry. We'll be there again in 2 weeks from now.
Vous écoutez So French.
You are listening to So French.
And then from Black Thursday to Black Friday. Did you buy something on Black Friday this
No,
this
actually
year?
I didn't. And I must say I was a little bit more aware. I'm not, I always every year think that I should buy my Christmas gifts in advance. I never do that because I just always end up doing it in the last week before Christmas. Yeah. But I think that this year, maybe I was a little bit more aware and, against the whole idea of being part of this Black Friday frenzy.
Absolutely, because what's interesting that it was only introduced to France 6 years ago. Of course, a very American day of shop till you drop, the day after Thanksgiving Day, which is actually not celebrated here in France. So that's strange. But now you see it everywhere. If you walk in the high streets in Paris and other large cities, you see all kinds of signs with Black Friday. This week I received a ton of emails every day with Black Friday promotions, even Black Friday weeks. So that's really new. And actually it caused a backlash against, not only against Black Friday, but also against internet shopping and overconsumption in general. There's some NGOs started a campaign saying make Black Friday green again.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, we can't just deny. And I think after these especially this last year, what we've seen when it comes to every report about how the environment is doing and what we have to do, we also know that, especially this online shopping that you could believe is harmless and, you're sitting at home, etc., and it's cheaper, etc. But I mean, it's very, very bad for the environment with all the transportation that it actually
and all the packaging.
And all the packaging, of course.
Crazy.
So you can't really say that you didn't know. And,
But it's very tempting. Sometimes you see, discounts and you say, okay, I have to buy it now because otherwise it's so expensive.
Of course, that's what the promotions are for, right? That's how it works, the whole idea of commercials. But, but you also, as you said, I think, this year I've seen almost as much, ads saying don't buy anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Just if you don't buy nothing, you will make 100% sale. I don't remember, but there are a lot of things like that have been circulating on social media these last couple of weeks. But despite that, it's a growing industry.
Absolutely.
It's a growing weekend of shopping. Last year, it grew about 4%, I think, in France, the shopping during Black Friday. We could probably expect a similar number this year. Yeah. So it shows that it's something that has, it's really taking its grip on France, and it's, it's here and it's now part of the, of the society, you could say. And that, despite the fact that actually in France, the sales are very regulated.
Absolutely.
And they're not part of the legal sales.
No, because there's only twice a year there's a sale, official sale, in summer and in winter. And so this Black Friday is really an opportunity for a lot of stores to generate extra income. But this wouldn't be France if politicians,
wouldn't put their fingers in.
Exactly. This week, French MPs passed an amendment in the committee that aims to ban publicity campaigns for Black Friday. They are part of the new anti-waste law condemning overconsumption, criticizing the shopping day's disastrous environmental record. Now, this is a ban on publicity about Black Friday, not on Black Friday itself. It will probably take a very long time before it becomes actually a real law. But if companies do publish ads for Black Friday or send emails, they will risk 2 years imprisonment and even a 300,000 euro fine. That's a pretty Black Friday.
Do you think is this a way forward to this?
I don't think so. No, I think, like you said, we have to become aware of the fact that it's so easy to consume. We buy a lot of stuff that we really don't need, or, new clothes every season. Whereas we can, maybe recycle stuff. I think it's all about creating awareness with the consumers.
Because it would be difficult to ban the idea of Black Friday.
Of course, and there will always be smart people who would transform it into a Red Wednesday or a Green Monday. It's typically French to think that if you make a law, then you will get rid of the problem. But of course, it doesn't work like this. But it's pretty serious. I'm not sure whether the Parliament will actually accept this law. But yeah, it's like we talked about Halloween a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Just one of those other American things.
Yeah.
And there's Black Friday now here to stay as well. So little by little, France is becoming a little bit more.
Make Black Friday green again.
Yeah, that's actually quite a nice slogan. Then, sad news in Africa, in Mali to be more precise. A collision of 2 helicopters killed 13 French soldiers during a night operation. The mission was part of a broader military effort against Islamist radicals in the Sahel region. And the 2 helicopters of the type Tiger and a Cougar, they were providing assistance to ground forces who were engaged in the counterterrorism operation. That's a statement from the French Defense Ministry. And of course, President Emmanuel Macron expressed his greatest respect for the fallen soldiers and his total support for the French military. Now, these soldiers were busy in the Operation Barkhane, which is launched in 2013, I think. What is it exactly, this operation?
Well, it's a military operation that started in an attempt to push out jihadists in Mali, because there was this risk of jihadists actually reaching the capital of Bamako in 2013.
Yeah.
And that's when the Malian authorities actually called on France for help and said that, we can't deal with this. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the training, nor the equipment to actually push back this offensive. And the French president at the time was François Hollande. Yeah. He accepted this mission, as has French military many times before around the world in different operations. And since then, yes, the operation, it was first called Serval, and then is now called Barkhane. It's an operation that is supposed to actually, it's not only France, it's supposed to include military forces from all 5 Sahel countries that are spanning from Mauritania to Chad.
Yeah, it's just an area the size of Europe. It's really enormous, and it's almost all desert.
Absolutely. It's a big area. And, all countries are supposed to participate. Very few actually are. It's also supposed to be supported financially, from European countries, even from Saudi Arabia. Yeah. However, the Saudi Arabian money has never, actually been, sent off.
Okay.
You have European countries that are participating in training missions, for example, but no boots on the ground. So the actual fighting on the ground is done by French
Absolutely.
Forces.
Yeah. And now it's really not very controversial in France, all these foreign operations.
No, they're not. And I think that in France, the whole the military is not something that people generally talk about. It's not. It's considered to be business of those who know more, or those at the top.
It's also like we are a big nation.
The French military might has always been.
Exactly. And actually, I looked this up. France is the most aggressive country in the history of the world, the country that started the most wars, also lost a lot of wars. So it's really part of the French identity, and which is not quite the case in Europe. Of course, Germany has a very different history, and that's
so different experiences as well.
Yeah, of course, but they are very reluctant to send their soldiers into other countries now.
They were by law prohibited from doing it until recently.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's also another issue. In France, the president can decide on his own. We go to war. In other countries, there's something very irritating that's called parliament.
Yes,
and so it takes a long time before parliament decides, and it's that's very annoying to a lot of French people, because they think, well, just send us troops, and that means that there's a little rift, of course, between the European countries and France, because the French now, they said it this week again, they more or less blame the other European member states that they are not doing enough, because the French say, well, this action Barkhane is also to protect Europe against jihadists, against terrorism. Of course, quite a few countries, they do participate, like currently Estonia, a very small country, but nevertheless, they contribute to the forces, and also the United Kingdom, and previously Spain and the Netherlands and Denmark. But yeah, like we just said, most European countries, they have a different view on these interventions.
Well, you can say you have different views. You can also say that since there's someone else doing the job, you don't really have to be bothered, because
true.
there is one truth to this story, and that is that you have a jihadist offensive going on, and you have forces, you have jihadists that are, really threatening the local population, the authority of the governance in this whole region. And what many specialists are saying is that if we don't pay attention to this problem while it's in the Sahel, we will at one point see the problem in Europe as well, as we did when it came to the jihadist threat in Iraq and in Syria, for example. And if you see, yes, you say that in Syria and Iraq today, the Islamic State group is more or less defeated, even though, it hasn't disappeared, but it's more or less defeated for the time at least. But their official, their aim now is to regroup and put the emphasis in Africa. Yeah. So I think it's not to exaggerate to say that there is a real threat, but then of course the question is this Europe? Should it be Europe being on the ground and really leading these operations? That's another question. The problem is as well that, many of these countries, it's poor governance. Yeah. You can't deny that in several, and poor countries in general. And then, so what do you do? It's a very difficult situation.
Absolutely. And it also comes at a time when there's a lot of debate about maybe a potential European army, something that Macron really would like to see. And of course, the role of the NATO. Can we still rely on NATO? And of course, next week there's a summit of the NATO, which Macron will also attend, although he will not stay very long because he will go back because the strike will start at that very day.
He better try to get home.
But it's all part of a larger debate on what to do with the European defense. And of course, France being probably the largest army, also an atomic power in the European Union, they really want to see more European collaboration.
And of course, it's a question of power. For France to remain an important player in Africa, which it shouldn't be, shouldn't be denied either. Of course, there is an interest from France to make sure that they are still important in that part of the world. So it's a complicated story. It's unfortunately a very sad story as well, because we're talking a lot about 13 dead French soldiers. Yeah. I think we have several hundred dead Malian forces over the last years. Yeah. So it's a very sad situation, and quite a difficult and worrying situation as well.
Absolutely. Now, Sarah, this is all serious business we've been talking. I think it's time for a drink.
Yes.
Don't you think so? Yeah.
Well, we better hurry up.
Yeah, we better hurry up, because in January, it may be dry January, so we won't be allowed to drink anymore. What's this story?
Well, dry January, I must say, I actually did dry January last year.
That's why you were so annoying at the beginning of this year. Now I remember.
It was the very first. It could have been my very last as well. I'm not making any promises for next year.
Did you like it? How was it?
I did. It was a challenge, in the sense that, it was just a challenge, and I don't know why. I'm not a heavy drinker, but just socially, especially here in France, it's not always. You're not used of going to places and then just say, "Well, I have some water."
Yeah, no, indeed.
But it was fun. Yeah, well, fun. It was okay. I survived. But this is a thing that has grown here in France, as everywhere in the Western world, I would say. Here in France, it's getting more and more people saying, I'm going to take a month without drinking alcohol, etc. And once again, it has gotten the authorities a little bit worried, but maybe not for the reason that you would think, right?
No, especially Emmanuel Macron. He doesn't like dry January at all.
No, maybe not. And, because there was a plan for a national campaign for dry January to raise awareness about, the risks of alcohol and overconsumption, etc. But this campaign has now been stopped in its tracks. Because
Emmanuel Macron likes a drink. He drinks at lunch, at the dinner, at least a glass of wine. That's what he says. So now people say, he is under the influence, not only of alcohol, but also of the lobby of the wine industry. Very powerful, of course. But then again, the French are amongst the heaviest drinkers of Europe. And then not necessarily binge drinkers, but they do drink much more than their neighbors, and more regularly, like you just mentioned, socially. So it's very accepted. It's very hard to say, no wine for me tonight. You really have to explain yourself. Huh? Yeah. Are you pregnant?
You've had that. I got the question all the time.
And then I say, no, I just have a big belly. I'm not pregnant. Don't worry. But in 2017, 41,000 people died from alcohol-related causes. And there's a huge disparity between men and women. 11% of men in France die because of an alcohol-related cause. And compared to Italy, where they also like wine, that's only 3%. So it's really a big issue here in France.
So, there are several problems with the alcohol consumption here in France, because some, of course, as you said, are mentioning the fact that people are drinking too much and there are health issues with that. Others are worried for another reason, and that is actually that since the 1940s, the alcohol consumption here in France has halved.
Wow.
And of course, there are people who are worried about that, because you have wine producers, France being one of the world's, of course, biggest wine producers. They are worried because they can't, sell off their bottles.
Absolutely.
The same thing anymore. And some are now saying that the reason why this campaign, Dry January, the official campaign from the French authorities, has been pushed back. It hasn't been completely
No.
forgotten.
There will be a dry.
They're saying that it's going to be they can't talk about the campaign until February. But, why it's been pushed back a little bit is because the influence of many MPs coming from regions where you have a big production of wine, and them in their, on their side being pushed by the producers to, make sure that they can sell their wine without having consumers that are feeling guilty for drinking in January and things like that. So, we'll see what happens to Dry January. Will it happen in February? We don't know.
We'll see about that. Well, let's open some bottles, Sarah, before it's too late. That wraps up this edition of So French. We hope you have enjoyed it. You can listen to us on all podcast platforms like iTunes, Spotify and TuneIn Radio. And we're also on Instagram. Our account is @SoFrenchNews. please follow us.
And if you like French music, check out our free playlist on Spotify, which we update regularly. Just search for So French Music or click the link on our website. And if you would like to contact us, please mail us on news@sofrench.news.
And you can also listen to us on air on World Radio Paris, not only in Paris, but also at the Côte d'Azur in Nice and Cannes. And So French is broadcast at 2:30 p.m. local time every Saturday and then rerun during the week.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode of So French.
We hope you'll join us then. Thanks for listening.
Au revoir.